time to answer questions, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well let's go ahead with that format then.
Okay, so what I thought I'd do today is something a little bit different than what I normally do. A lot of times my webinars, my StomperNet webinars have been on kind of productivity issues. So I talk a lot about focus and not spreading yourself too thin, working on 1 or 2 projects at a time, deciding what those highest priority projects are and really getting them done and focusing on finishing as opposed to starting everything. And this time I wanted to give you a tool that will help you resolve conflicts. And the reason I think that's important is because if you have some kind of conflict, whether it's kind of with yourself as to you're not sure what to work on or what direction to go in, or it could be a conflict with somebody else, this is a tool that might be able to help you get really focused. Because if I summarized all of theory of constraints down to one word, that word would be focus. So what can we do to become extremely focused to get more done? And this is one of the tools that can really help us if we run into an issue. So maybe we are focused and we run into a conflict. This can help us solve it. If we're not moving on because we do have a conflict, then this tool can be extremely helpful. And this is probably one of the most powerful tools in theory of constraints. And I have another slide here I wanted to show you. Theory of constraints is the kind of the whole thing underlying theory of constraints are these set of thinking processes. And the conflict resolution diagram, which happens to be number 1 right up here in this diagram here, is the one I'm going to cover today. But what I want you to realize is that anytime I talk about a theory of constraint solution, like if we're talking about how to be more productive, all of it was derived from this set of thinking processes. So there's this rigorous cause and effect logic kind of underlying all of this. And this little conflict cloud is sort of the start of our whole process. So we say, well, gee, what's the core problem? What's the core issue? And then from there we can derive the complete understanding of the problem and then eventually the solution. And so this is really core to all of theory of constraints, what you're going to learn today. And of course, I'm only going to spend about 15 minutes on this just to give you a flavor for it. But what I'd like for you to do is kind of play with this, because it's something you can use in everyday life. And then the next faculty office hour, come back, bring me some of your clouds, ask some questions, and then let's build on this. Because if you can master this, it opens up all kinds of new possibilities. So with that, let me jump back to my PowerPoint presentation. And feel free to type questions in or raise your hand at any point. And when I get to a good place, I'll check to see if there's any questions, and we'll go from there. Okay, so when we look at the, we call this in theory of constraints, we call it a cloud. And Dr. Goldratt named it a cloud because in Jonathan Livingston Seagull's book, the name is escaping me for a moment here, he talked about evaporating clouds with your mind. And so the idea is that if we're logical and we think, we can evaporate a cloud. In other words, the conflict will disappear. And so in theory of constraints, we call it a cloud. A more mainstream term for it would be conflict resolution diagram. But this is a typical conflict resolution, how we draw it. And I've labeled these boxes just A, B, C, D, and D prime. And of course, the conflict is occurring between D and D prime. And I just label them so that we can refer to them as you have questions. You can refer to them. Here in this A box is where you verbalize what the goal is. Now, if it's a conflict between 2 people, presumably there is a common objective or goal. Any 2 people who are in conflict, if they do not have a common goal, are not likely to resolve the conflict. I mean, that we know this from history. So there tends to be a goal if it's something that you're trying to decide. between, and this could be D and D prime could be two actions that you're trying to decide between. If it's something internal that you're struggling with, or it could be person A's side what they want to do and person B's side what they want to do, and usually these things are mutually exclusive. In other words, you can't do both of these things. If your husband wants to see Avatar, the movie Avatar, and you want to see It's Complicated, and you can't go see both at the same time, then we have a conflict, right? And presuming that the goal is to spend time together, then we would have that conflict. So the goal is either your goal, what you're trying to achieve, the common objective between two people. It's some sort of verbalization like that. Now from there, once you have the goal stated, sometimes I'll build the clouds starting with the goal and going the other way, and sometimes I'll start with box D, and I'll show you more about how to build them. But presumably there is a common objective, so you have this goal, and then from there, if this side was your side, then you would say what your need is. What need do you have that's going to help meet that goal? So in order to achieve this goal, I must do this. And this B box is a need, some sort of need that you have. And because of this need, then I want to take this action. So if your side is I want to see It's Complicated, your need might be to relax and not feel anxious or something like that. And then you would have whatever action that you wanted to take as a result of trying to meet that need. See, most conflicts occur because we don't understand the other person's need. And by really understanding what your need is, what need you're trying to meet, the action, usually there's lots of different actions that will meet a need. So we want to understand what your need is, and then we want to understand the other person's need that they're trying to meet and the action that they want to take to meet that need. Now imagine we had this all filled out, and now you understand what the other person's need is, and all of a sudden it starts to become clear that, well, there's other ways to meet this need. It doesn't have to be this action. And same thing for your need. There's other things you could do. And so what ends up happening is because now you've clearly documented and kind of stated this conflict, now we've got a chance of really resolving it. And in theory of constraints, we typically say that we're not resolving this by coming up with a compromise, because we don't want to compromise on these needs. In other words, if these needs are correct, and we need to have both of these needs to meet the goal, because notice the needs are not in conflict. Both needs need to be met to meet this goal. Then we're not challenging here. What we're doing instead is we're saying, is there some other action that would meet both needs, so that we don't have this conflict here at the action step. So typically what I do is I start with this D box to get started building it. As I said, sometimes I'll go the other direction, but I have a lot of experience with these, and actually I don't draw these out too much anymore. I do them more in my head. But when I first started, this was the way that I learned to build these, is you'd start with this D box here. So the first thing is, what is it that I want, or what am I having trouble getting? And you would verbalize that here in this D box. Then we're immediately going to the conflict. What's the conflict? Because almost always we know what the conflict is. I want to do this, and the other person wants to do this, and this we know. Well, we may not always know this other stuff yet, but that's where the analysis comes in. So what does the other person want? What is it that the other persons want that I don't want them to have, or some verbalization of the conflict, or two mutually exclusive actions. So if this were kind of an internal conflict, it could be two mutually exclusive things. But those are the first two steps. So first step is what I want. Second step is what the other side typically wants. Then, what need am I trying to meet by taking this action? So why is it that I feel the need to do this thing? So why do I want what I want? What need am I trying to fulfill? And that's what we put in this box here. Then we move on to the other side and what the other person needs. So why do the others want what they want? What need do they have? What need are they trying to meet by taking this action? And then, of course, the goal. And the goal is, what goal do we mutually share? Why are we still arguing? So what is the overall goal? And usually the goal is verbalized such that both needs are a requirement. So the goal, in order to achieve this goal, both needs need to be met. So if we use this rigor and fill this diagram out, the conflicts almost start to dissolve themselves. It becomes pretty obvious as to what needs to be done. Now when we read these, we read it the opposite direction. So when we started to fill it out, I had you start over here with this D box, and we built it going so we built it kind of going this way. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start with A and read to the right. Okay, so to read this, I would say, in order to achieve this goal, so in order to A, we must meet this need. In order to meet this need, we must take this action. At the same time, in order to achieve this goal, we must meet this need. And in order to meet this need, we must take this action. And so it becomes obvious you can't do both of these things. And you can hear in how you read that the logic is embedded in that. And so this is part of the logic that we use in theory of constraints to understand situations. So in order to do this goal, I need to meet this need. In order to meet that need, I want to take this action. In order to meet this goal, we also need to meet this need. In order to meet this need, we need to take this action, and we can't do both of these things. So we read it from A to D, the other direction. All right. So here's probably one of my favorite conflicts. And I think it's one of my favorites because it's so universal. And as I'm talking to people, I see this conflict all the time, and I myself experience it. So in order to be happy, I must be secure. In order to be secure, I must not change. At the same time, in order to be happy, I must be satisfied. In order to be satisfied, I must change. So it's a change, don't change kind of conflict. Now, if I were doing this on a specific issue, like right now I'm getting ready to move, if I were doing this on a specific issue, it would be specific to the move. And I would have needs in here about security. Well, because if I buy a new house and I start over with the mortgage, and who knows what's going to happen with the stock market, the security need would be verbalized as what specific to whatever situation I'm talking about. The not change would be, I should stay where I am, I should not move. And you would make this more specific to your situation. So there are probably, 15 or 20 probably fairly generic conflicts like this, and the kind of resurface again and again. And because I've been doing this for so long, and I know that there tends to be these repeating themes, what I help people do mostly is verbalize these so that both for their side, and if there's another person involved, the other side, that it's verbalized in such a way that both people would read the conflict and say, yeah, that adequately represents my side, and I believe that represents our conflict, because now once we have this defined, we can go about solving it or tackling this conflict. So here's another example. In order to make more profits, I must motivate better performance. In order to motivate better performance, I must pay high salaries. At the same time, to make more profits, I need to control expenses. In order to control expenses, I shouldn't pay high salaries. Okay, so if I'm trying to decide how to pay people, this could be another conflict diagram that I might draw. Now, once you have this, as I said, a lot of times it becomes pretty obvious what the issue is, but when it's not, what we do is we understand the assumptions underlying each arrow. So under each of these arrows is an assumption. In other words, in order to motivate better performance, I must pay high salaries because, and it's the because that is my assumption. Money is the only motivator, for example. And so as you understand your assumptions and whoever's on the other side, their assumptions, now you start to see how this will disappear. And what you're looking for is a solution, again, that allows you to motivate better performance but control expenses. You want both of these things to happen so that you're more profitable, but you want an action that allows both of these needs to be met. Because if we take this action, we're on this side, and if we take this action, we're only controlling expenses, we may not necessarily motivate better performance. So we need an action that's going to allow both of these things to happen. And so now, because we've uncovered these assumptions, we have a chance to say, okay, what action might simultaneously motivate better performance and control expenses? So, one solution to that is pay some salary and then pay a commission for certain performance, right? It depends on what kind of position we're talking about, but pay based on the sales they bring in, for example. So pay a commission on sales. On the one hand, I can control expenses because I have some portion of the salary fixed, a kind of a base salary that's fixed, so I can control it, and I can motivate performance because some portion of the salary will be paid based on how they do. Excuse me. So that's what I wanted to do in the first few minutes, was give you guys an overview of this. And if we have questions either on this or on the stuff I typically talk about, anything theory of constraints related, we'll take those questions. If we don't have questions, then what I'd like to do is have you guys take some time and draw out a cloud and ask questions based on you trying to create your own conflict diagram, because if you start to use this tool, you'll find it extremely powerful. There's a lot of people who discover theory of constraints, and really the only thing that they ever get experience at or good at is using this conflict diagram, and that they get huge benefit just by learning this. So do we have any questions, Ryan? See, I don't see any hands raised.
I'm sorry, I was I was talking and I realized later that I was on mute. The very first question they have is back on the page, the thinking process field guide. They were asking, is there a way that they could get a copy of that page?
I'll see if I can get a copy of that somehow to the StomperNet members. I would assume if I send it to somebody over at StomperNet, they can post it for you, so I'm sure we can make that happen.
Okay, perfect. Hans is asking, and I'm not sure at what point this was referring to, but it says, is this an engineered version of psychotherapy?
Yeah, probably. It's because it's logic based. There's always emotion in these things, and essentially, particularly if you were having a conflict with a spouse, for example, or a teenage son or daughter, these can be extremely helpful because it puts logic into something that can be very emotional. So in a way it is. Yeah, it's kind of, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a psychologist, but I will say that doing this analysis can be extremely powerful and can take out some of the emotion that often keeps us from resolving conflicts. If both sides are extremely emotional about something, it makes it tough to get past it. So yeah, I'd say that's not a bad way to say that.
Okay, great. And some of these you have already answered. Somebody's asking, how do I begin to learn about theory of constraints?
Well, I think it depends on what you want to learn about. Again, theory of constraints is about focus, right? And then we have some tools like this so that if you wanted to focus on something in particular, and there was, I'll give you one more example, and I can show you what I mean by the focus thing. One of the theory of constraints tools we have is helping manufacturing companies and even service companies produce more let's use the manufacturing example just to be consistent. So if you make 100 widgets a week now, typically what we can do is help you make 200 widgets a week without buying any equipment or hiring any people. And there is some methods and tools we have to use that. When we run into that, what we need them to do is to decrease their work and process to make it happen. So this is what we need them to do to be able to output twice as many widgets. But they don't want to do this, and here's the conflict. So in order to manage productive effectively, I need to produce large lots. So in other words, I need to have big batches of things. In order to produce in large lots, I need to increase the work and process. So this is what they're saying of why they don't want to do what we want them to do. But at the same time, to manage productive effectively, I need to keep costs down and delivery in control. In order to do that, I need to decrease the work and process. So here we are wanting them to do this, and the efficiency measures and keeping people busy measures are making them want to be up here. So in theory of constraints, if I said the biggest issue you have is being able to get more out, you can sell more if you can get more out, and you need to get more out, and what I need you to do is go decrease the work and process. Well, if somebody was running into problems trying to do this, that's where this tool would come into play. So how do you get started with theory of constraints? The first thing is, well, where do you need help? You know, what is keeping you from achieving more of your goal? So whatever your goal is, if your goal is to make more money or increase education, if you're a nonprofit, whatever your goal is, what's your goal? What's keeping you from getting more of your goal? And then that will direct you to what part of theory of constraints to go into. The thinking processes are pretty universal. So what they can do is help you do some of that analysis. But that's a tough question to answer. If you haven't read a book called The Goal, that's also a good place to start. I'll write that out. There's a book, the best-selling business book in the world was Dr. Goldratt's original book called The Goal, and it takes place in a manufacturing company, but you know, he talks about applying some of the concepts there. If you're not really into reading about manufacturing company, then another place where he talks about how to think and some of these thinking processes called The Choice. And one of those could be a good place to start depending on kind of where you are. But the key answer to that is understand where you should focus, what's keeping you from more of your goal, and that should lead you in the right direction.
Let me just say as well, because Lisa has done other webinars and you know, where you have gone through the theory of constraints a little more in detail that we have in the portal. So if you just also, you know, obviously the goal and the choice, these are great places to start. But Lisa's done some great webinars already. If you just type in Lisa Lang in the search box in the portal, it will pull up those webinars.
Yeah, and you can also ask questions. So if you watch one of those webinars, I've got an alert set up where if you ask a question that has theory of constraints in it or Dr. Lisa Lang, I will get an email so that I know that you've asked a question and I can go and try to answer it. So again, theory of constraints, if you type that out or Dr. Lisa Lang out, I'll be notified.
There you go. Well, let me see if we have any hands raised before we continue. Because that's what we have for questions right now. No hands raised, so.
Okay, so if nobody has any other questions, then what I suggest we do is we go through and build one of these. Let's build a conflict. I mean, unfortunately, all of us have conflicts all over the place. I mean, they're just, let me go back here. And let's build a conflict diagram for you. So the first thing you do is, you know, kind of just draw out these 5 boxes like this and label them A, B, C, D, and D prime. Let me bring up a blank, and I will do this along with you. Okay, so just draw this base diagram. And the arrows go this way. Okay, so get this drawn out. And let's label these A, B, C, D, and D prime. And now have a situation in mind. And the first thing we're going to do is fill in this box D. And box D is what the action you want to take. So fill in the action that you want to take here. And so D and D prime are always actions. One is your action, and one is the other side's action. But what is it you want to do? What action do you want to take? And write that in here. And Ryan, if we get questions as we're going here, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to give everybody a little bit of time to kind of fill these in.
Right.
Oh, and I lost part of my boxes. All right, then once you've got your action in, then you want to write in the action for the other side. So it could be an alternate action for you, or if it's a conflict with somebody else, the action that they want to take, and fill that in here. And try to be fairly, short about it, because usually it can be easily described as, I want to do this, and they want to do this. And you're going to write in the action. And if somebody has one that they want me to put up on the screen here, type in what your D is. So tell me D equals, and then D, I don't think you can do it prime, so put D2 equals, and type that in, and I'll fill it in here, and we'll go through this together. If somebody has one they don't mind sharing.
I'm looking for hands raised or questions. So far, we don't have any takers.
No takers?
Not yet.
Okay.
Somebody will get the courage.
Okay. I'll see if I can.
Okay, we have. Let's see.
This is extremely powerful, so it can be very beneficial to volunteer.
Okay, so Craig Griffiths, if you are on a headset, great. If you're just with your computer and using computer speakers, we're going to get feedback. So if that's the case, if you could telephone in, that would be ideal. But Craig, I'm going to unmute you, and we'll see what happens. Oh, he's calling in, so let's give him a second to call in.
Okay, and this can be a conflict that you have with a teenage son or daughter, with a spouse, with somebody at work, a subcontractor, and usually there's lots of those to go around.
I'm sorry, Craig, go ahead and enter #90#.
Okay, for those of you who've already got the actions entered, once you get the action, then you're going to type in your need. So what need are you trying to meet? And you're going to put that in the B box here. What need are you trying to meet by taking this action? Why is it that you want to take this action? And type that here into B.
Sorry, we're still... Craig, go ahead and try #90#. See if that works.
And he could just type in, I would assume, what he has here.
He's indicating it's not working. Sorry about this, Lisa.
No problem.
I'm going to unmute you now, Craig, and we'll probably get feedback. But are you there, Craig?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
No feedback?
Nope.
So Craig, give us a little bit of background on the situation or the conflict, and then take a stab at verbalizing D and D prime.
Sure. Background, my girlfriend and I constantly are having the little diagram you wrote about security, satisfaction, status quo, and change.
Mm-hmm.
That really rung true for me. So to get specific to a situation, excuse me, the action in general is usually save money to create security, and the deprime action in general is usually spend money to create satisfaction.
And do you have something in particular that, a
Sure.
particular example that either who wants to spend and who wants to save, is it typically the
Right.
same?
It's typically that I want to spend and she wants to save. In this specific example, and I'm even trying to convince her to spend more money. Just yesterday, she said, "Oh, I can't afford to get a massage, and I really need one." I'm like, "Get a massage. Don't worry about the money." But this particular example is a weekend seminar that I'm wanting to attend, and it's about $1,000 seminar that I obviously want to spend money to create some change in my attitude towards business. Releasing some what do they call it? Emotional blocks or something like that. Oops, sorry about that. And she's worried that we're not going to have enough money if we have some sort of problem. Somebody gets hurt, or somebody gets hurt and can't work, or something like that. We're both in debt right now and don't have any money saved. That kind of stuff. So we're kind of on a financial edge, but so I do see both sides of the coin for sure.
Okay, so what she wants to do is save for the future. Or save for a rainy day, or save.
Right.
However, you would want to verbalize this. However, it would ring true for her. So if there's some wording that she uses all the time, like
Right.
Who's that one financial person? It's always, Susie Orman's always talking about having 6 months of savings in case you lose a job or whatever. So if she's always saying we need to have 6 months of savings, or you'd want to use whatever verbalization she would typically have here, because when you're having a conflict with another person, that you could actually use this diagram to work through the conflict. And you could say, so I understand that you prefer that I not attend this and spend that $1,000. So this could either be attend weekend seminar, or don't attend it, or don't spend the $1,000, and you could verbalize it either way.
Right.
I verbalized it, attend weekend seminar, because I think that's going to help. I'll put your need in here. But she's got a need to save for the future. And what is your need? So why do you want to attend the seminar? What need are you trying to meet by attending it? What's going to come out of it for you?
I'm trying to escape my paradigm of living paycheck to paycheck. Does that make sense? Does that qualify?
Yep. Okay, so yours is a more, you kind of got to spend money to make money kind of thing.
Right.
Get out of what you're currently doing. So let's see. Do you have a stab? How would you verbalize that need?
Spend money to make money is a good one. Does that make sense?
It's probably not a need. What's the need?
More specific. The need is personal change. Is that too general?
Yeah, I don't think that's quite it. I think it's something like increase my future earnings potential.
Okay.
You know, it's like you want to invest in yourself so that you can earn more in the future.
Okay. I can very much agree with that. Let me ask you a question at this point. So it appears to me that this is one of the tricky parts of the model.
Yep.
And so I may not have come up with that need without your help. What can you do, or what can you, maybe some pointers you can give us on how you came up with that?
Okay. Would you come up with this one for your girlfriend?
Yeah, I think so. You know, but you can, you know, talk to both of them if you think that helps.
Yeah, usually, as I said, D and D Prime are pretty straightforward because you know what the conflict is. Spend the $1,000, don't spend it. Attend the weekend seminar, don't attend it. So these are usually pretty straightforward. Where the rubber meets the road is getting these needs right. And you have to say, okay, why? I don't want to spend the $1,000 just to spend it. What am I expecting to get out of it? I'm trying to increase my future earnings potential. You know, I'm trying to get out of the, I know if I keep doing the same things, I'm going to keep getting the same results.
Right.
So my need could be to have bigger results in the future. It could be, so you've got to get really clear about the need, make sure it's a need. And just, yeah, but it can be tough to do.
Right. So, something rang true with me there, because it made me think, I mean, so when I said personal change, I think that's actually more, or maybe more specific on personal change is, you know, instead of maybe increase my future earnings potential, increase my future happiness or my future satisfaction. I mean, because to me, it's not really making the money, and I can see that the money part is, you know, is the concern of my girlfriend, but I'm more concerned about just creating the lifestyle that I want to create, whether it's making money or just.
So is this a need around creating lifestyle?
Yeah, creating lifestyle or creating personal happiness. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
And you know, so a lot of self-awareness searching going on here. But I would say increase personal happiness. Does that qualify? Is that too general?
It's almost more an objective here, and it would be.
I see. Right, and we haven't stated a goal yet. So
this is your need, and you. So what need that if you met it would increase your personal happiness?
Right.
So if it's not about the money for you.
Right. Unblocking emotional blocks. That's kind of out there. But it's a, you know, to me it's more of a psychology, and the psychology of success, which, you know, and maybe we should just stick with future earnings for simplicity's sake, go on to goal, and maybe that'll help me move backwards. Yeah,
but I think you're on to, you do need to get this correctly verbalized for you, that whatever this need is, and the other thing is that when you put this goal in, so let's say that the goal is to be secure and happy for both of you, right? This is your joint goal, and I'm going to make one up here, secure and happy, now and in the future.
That's a good one. Yep, that's a good one.
Okay, so the goal is to be secure and happy now and in the future. In order to be secure and happy now and in the future, I need to increase our future earning potential. So that's the future piece of this goal. I must increase our future earning potential. In order to increase our future earning potential, I need to attend this webinar, because right now I have these blocks. So the assumptions under here is that this webinar is going to uncover some blocks for you, or it's going to do something that's going to allow you to do this, right? You've got some assumptions about what's going to come out of that. At the same time, in order for us to be secure and happy now and in the future, we need to save for the future. In order to save for the future, we shouldn't spend that $1,000. We shouldn't attend that webinar.
Okay.
So you can keep wordsmithing it, and the key is that it resonates for you and it resonates for her, and that she agrees this is the right objective or goal.
Sure.
And that both of these needs need to happen to achieve that. And so if this isn't the right verbalization, then spending some time and getting that verbalization right would be beneficial. And then you sit down with her and you go through this. And the next step would be, if it wasn't obvious what to do, then you would say, well, what are our assumptions? Well, the assumption under this area is that I can't both attend it and not attend it, or I can't attend it for free, right? That would be an assumption, because if you could attend it for free, it may be less of an issue. But you want to go through each of these arrows and say, because in order to increase our future earnings potential, I must attend the weekend seminar because, and you want to line those out.
Right.
And because, and somewhere in this process, what will happen is you'll have an aha.
Right.
And then you'll know what to go do.
Sure. Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Okay, Craig. Thank you.
I was kind of hoping, though, you'd tell me that I should go to the seminar.
That's probably not my job.
Right. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
But I mean, that's a good point, is sometimes you can use logic to make whatever case you want, and I think as human beings we tend to pick and choose the facts to support whatever we want to have happen. And the power of this is taking the emotion out of it and then saying, what need am I trying to meet? And you could discover that, in fact, that particular seminar is not going to help you with that need. Or maybe it is perfectly, and you know exactly how it is and why it is going to do that. So this can be very powerful, just kind of walking through this and understanding all that. All right, so do we have another volunteer or some other questions?
I'm looking just waiting for more volunteers. We have somebody saying your middle step is that a miracle occurs. You may want to be more specific at this step.
At which my middle step is that a miracle occurs. It's not that it's a miracle. It's that, well, let me show you. I can show you an example. It's the logic becomes clear. Okay, so here's the one that I challenged in this particular diagram. In order to manage production effectively, I must produce usually it's in large lots. In order to produce in large lots, I have to increase the work in process. Now, in order to produce in large lots, I must increase the work in process because why? Because all machines must be kept busy all the time. Now, this is a big assumption that a lot of shops have, that they have to keep all the machines busy all the time, and that's why they end up with so much work in process. So by writing these out, what will happen is one of these assumptions will bother you the most. See, it doesn't bother me that WIP is expensive, because I believe that it is expensive, that's true. And that high WIP delays flow time, that's also true. I don't have any issue with that. That doesn't. So you're looking for the assumption that when you write it out, that you go, there's something not right about that. And in this case, it was that all machines must be kept busy all the time. And so what we challenged in this case was this assumption, because who said that all machines need to be busy all the time? They don't. And what if you could go from making 100 widgets a week to 200 if you were willing to give this up and say, that's not a true statement. And so what we end up doing is decreasing the work in process. So this one actually goes away, and it turns out that we can meet both needs by doing this. So sometimes you're going to do one of these, other times you're going to come up with a new action that's going to allow you to meet both needs. But it's this process of uncovering these assumptions that leads to the discovery. And it's hard because your conflict diagrams tend to be so personal that other than going through examples, it can be tough to figure out, to give you specifics of exactly how to resolve the conflict. But the general solution is it's in the assumptions. The answer is in your assumptions. There'll be some assumptions that you go, no, that's not right. So if we do another example, we can dig into that a little more.
Okay, guys, let's volunteer. If somebody has, I know somebody out there has a problem that they're trying to resolve. So, okay, so would this work if there were more than 2 items of conflict? Is it example D, D2, and D3, etc.?
Well, yeah, it can work. You would have another box, essentially like this. And usually when that happens, these are all mutually exclusive alternatives. So if you had 3 mutually exclusive alternatives and you're trying to figure out the best one, you could essentially do the same analysis with 3. So yeah, you could do it. You would still want to understand the assumptions between each arrow. So for each alternative 1, alternative 2, and alternative 3, what need are you trying to meet by doing it? So it can happen. I don't do this a lot, but it would happen if I'm trying to choose between 3 things. Most of the time, if we came up with, can there be 3 alternatives? Sure, but there's usually 2 that we're trying to decide between. We've already gotten rid of kind of the ones that we know are not the right fit. But if you did have 3, yeah, you could just add a 3rd.
Okay, we do have a hand. Jeffrey Parker. Let me unmute Jeffrey. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. Okay. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you for...
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, so I guess my theory of constraints is our ultimate goal is me and my fiance want to get married. That's our goal.
Okay.
Our need is money.
Okay. So
And
read it to me. So in order for us to get married,
in order for us to get married,
I must, this is your need.
I must make more money, make enough money to split the bills down the middle.
How about to pay my share? Is
To pay my share, yeah.
all right?
That's the ideal situation.
Okay. And in order to make enough money to pay my share, I must do what? What's the action?
My action that I want is to build my business, get more clients, and make more money off the internet.
And what kind of do you have a full-time other type of non-internet job now?
No.
Okay. And what would she prefer you do?
She preferred, we could probably guess, is to find work.
Find a real job.
Another company. Find a real job, quote unquote real job, yes.
All right. And by the way, now that you guys are learning this, you're going to start to see everything this way. It just kind of, you start to view the world through these conflict diagrams. All right, what need is she trying to meet by wanting you to get a real job?
For me to have the steady, stable income to pay my share, so we can get married right away. So we have the same needs.
No, they're kind of 2 different needs. If you think about it, yeah, there are 2 different needs. So yours is to make enough to share it. Hers is steady, stable. So she sees that I see another good check on a good cloud is that if you did this, it would put this need in jeopardy. And in her view, if you did this, steady, stable would not be a possibility. And in your view, if you did this, you wouldn't make enough.
Yeah.
Right? So this is a perfect cloud because you can see how it absolutely, this action puts her need in jeopardy and this action puts your need in jeopardy.
Yes.
Okay, so now you have to sit down with her and uncover the assumptions. And you can take a stab at this on your own, but go through each assumption. And for you, this one might be pretty interesting. Build my internet business, get a real job. So the assumption is that I don't have enough time to do both. But the key to solving this is income, is meeting both of these needs, is generating income that she views as steady and stable enough. So is there
completely different?
Yes, yeah, completely different needs, completely different. She's on the security side. You're on the satisfaction side. Right? So she's saying, I need steady, stable. And you can say, I just need to make enough. She said, no. Enough isn't, that's not her thing. Her thing is steady, stable. Which you said, right?
Yeah.
So what is the action that's going to give you both of these things? That's the solution. Now it could be something up here in your internet business that is stable enough. Like if you could start an internet business where you were getting reoccurring income, so you weren't having to sell each month, it was reoccurring, that's more steady, stable. So it's not that she's against this, she's just saying this is not steady, stable, right?
Yeah. Because I was a personal trainer for 7 years, and she understands what that was like, and nothing was steady, stable because it was up, down, based off clients coming and going.
Yeah. So you can do this, and she will support you if you can make it steady, stable, or at least some portion of it. Enough of it has to be steady, stable. So the first question is, how much do you think would need to be steady, stable? Like if there was, $5,000 a month that was steady, stable, that was like coming in, and then on top of that was more fluctuating. How much needs to be steady, stable, and then build your business with some steady, stable in it, and that's going to meet her need.
Okay.
But my thought was some kind of reoccurring income, something that pays you every month.
Yeah, I have a chiropractor in the area that I'm helping, and he's giving me a $1,500 check every month so far, as long as I'm, making them happy and bringing in clients through online, which is steady and stable. But I don't have enough of those kind of clients to meet her.
Yeah, see, if you only have one of those and that goes away, then it's not steady, stable. But if you had 3 or 4 or 5 of those, and if one of them went away, then that would still be fairly stable. And if you knew what the attrition rate was, then if you say, well, they tend to stay with me for 8 months, and that you knew every 8 months you needed to get one to replace it, so that would
be stable.
Yeah, that would certainly be a lot more steady, stable. I mean, you could make the case that real jobs aren't steady, stable that much anymore, but I think that would just cause an argument. The better solution is trying to figure out how to make this steady, stable enough that it satisfies this need of hers.
Yeah, because I'm going to party mixers and stuff where employees are going to be to kind of sort of satisfying her need that she thinks I'm going in that direction, but even though my heart's not there,
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I'd be willing to bend things, but, if like you said in the theory of constraints, if one's heart really isn't there, I'm humble. I'm willing to look at anything, no matter how hard it is to look at it. Like emotionally for me, I will totally look at it and stare it in the face because I really want to solve this.
Yep. So I think the solution is to build a steady, stable internet biz. Now you've got some homework to do to figure out what that means for you. How can I build a steady, stable internet business? How can I get more reoccurring income? And how much reoccurring would I need to get that even if some of it kind of went away, because that's the nature of it, would it still be enough, right? So this needs to be enough that even as it ebbs and flows a little, so like let's say that if 5,000 was enough, but it was ebbing and flowing between 10 and 6, you've got a steady, stable business.
Yeah. I just got to figure out all the little bubbles on how to get that going.
Yeah, so ask her what minimum amount per month would you consider steady and stable? Like if I could build a business that was at a minimum had that was the minimum, what's that magic number?
And I think you hit it. I think that 5,000 is that magic number that would make her sigh and just think that's stable, like even with the fluctuations.
Okay, so if this were the minimum, then you've got to say, okay, how do I need, depending on what kind of business you build, then what I need somewhere between 6 and 10 that are coming in per month so that my minimum is always 5,000. So if you had like the chiropractor, you just need let's see, five more chiropractors, and then if some of them dropped off but you always were putting new ones in, you would be in that range.
So 6 to 10K. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm making up. I made up all this, but 6 to 10K. If this number is 5 and she's seeing that you're bouncing between 6 and 10, she's going to be steady, stable. That her needs get met.
She's going to be happy.
Yeah. If she thinks there's a possibility of this dropping below the 5K, she's still going to be nervous, and her need won't be getting met all the time, and it'll be a place of worry for her. So you just got to.
And stress.
Yeah, it'll be worry and stress because this is where she's living here. And to eliminate the worry and stress, you got to be bouncing between numbers greater than whatever that minimum is for her.
Okay. And then if not, then I need to figure out a solution bend my needs or to meet hers.
Well, you don't, for me, the foundation of a relationship is that everybody's needs get met. So you don't want to have to give up your needs. If your need is to make enough money, or your need is to, in some ways, if this is your need, she could say, well, just get a real job that's more than that. So your need probably isn't just about making enough to pay your share.
No.
Your need is probably more about doing something that challenges you, or something that achieving something which there was a doubt you could achieve. Satisfaction typically comes from achieving something which we weren't quite sure we could achieve. That's how a lot of us get satisfaction. And so you're wanting to do something that's a bit of a stretch for you or something like that. And you might be able to meet that need with a real job if it's the right real job. So just get really clear on what this need is for you and get really clear on what her need is. And then together you say, okay, how can we do both? Brainstorm ideas on how you can do both. And you see it by drawing this out, it makes it visual, and you start to brainstorm. You say, well, is there a real job that would allow me to meet that need? Maybe I just don't know about it. Maybe it's out there. Is there an internet business that could be steady and stable?
Of course.
So the solving this comes in being very clear on these needs and then saying, okay, how can we meet both of them? And then sometimes it can be as easy as that. Other times it really helps to uncover, when you uncover these assumptions, sometimes you'll find out that these needs might not be verbalized exactly right. So uncover, just saying because and lining out a few assumptions that you have under each one can help improve the verbalization. But once you get this verbalized and you know your needs, that becomes the core to your relationship. Now these needs can adjust and change over time. Like once you both have steady and stable income. Once your income is steady and stable, that's not the need anymore, right? There could be another need to spend more time together or to have to grow a family, to something like that. Then the need can change over time.
Yeah, and I see those coming down the pike, which is another reason why I'm more towards my own business, because I see all the other needs coming down the pike that a job would hamper.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is this going to be recorded and put in the portal to rewatch?
Yes, it should be. Look for it in the next few days.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jeffrey.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lisa.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
Not at the moment.
Well, we're right at an hour. How long do the faculty sessions go? Is it typically an hour?
Usually an hour, sometimes a little longer. Just depends on how things are going.
Okay.
Craig Griffith has his hand up again.
Okay.
Let me unmute him. Go ahead, Craig.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Craig.
Hi. So I thought the last caller had a great point about maybe I don't know if it's a shortcoming of the model or something I'm not understanding, but because you're looking at these goals individually, there may be solving one goal in the short term may hinder your ability to solve another goal that's more long term or coming up in the future. In this example, they may solve the current problem by saying he is going to get a job, and then just a couple years down the road, the problem becomes we're not spending enough time together, or we don't have enough time to raise a family together, and they can look back on the previous decision and go, maybe we didn't do this one right. Mm-hmm. Or I'm not sure. Is there something I'm missing in there?
No, I think it's the nature of conflicts. Conflicts are typically occurring in the moment. We tend to not think in the future about conflicts that could occur. So what Jeffrey has the foresight to say, another need I'm trying to meet by doing this is a need to be able to start a family and spend time with that family, even though that's not a need right now. So I think it's smart to, when you're thinking about your need, to think about it now as well as in the future. Now, there are done many conflict diagrams where the action on the top is the action for right now, and the action on the bottom is the action for the future. And it's very common to have a conflict for take an action that's going to help me now and take an action that's going to help me in the future. But that's not the conflict he's living just yet. So that's not the conflict that he said. But as soon as that becomes the conflict he's living, it would be the one that he would verbalize. But I absolutely do think it's smart to be thinking out into the future about where do I want to go. Now, you can also, how you can take into account now in the future is also how you describe your objective. If your objective is now and into the future, then you start to think not only about now, but solving the conflict for now, but into the future. So if you're living a conflict that is happening now, and it's not necessarily a conflict about now and into the future, typically you won't see the future show up in there because you're so into the emotions around the conflict now. If your conflict is about the future, or spend time doing something to help me to make more money now, or spend something to secure my future, then the future tends to come into it. So in some ways the model can take into account the future, but in some ways it doesn't. It really depends on the conflict we're talking about.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions?
No other questions and no other hands right now.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions, then we can pick up on this again next month. I'd like for you guys to practice a few of these. Practice getting the needs right, practice surfacing the assumptions, and then next month we can, if you want to send me those ahead of time, we can actually pull those up on the screen and look at some of those and make sure that that the logic is sound. Because if you get these right, if you not only accurately represent your needs and the actions, but also the logic is sound, in other words, that this action does jeopardize this need and this action does jeopardize this need, and so you have a logically sound conflict, it's much easier to solve. So what we can do is I can pull up your conflicts and we can look to see that they are logically sound from that perspective. And that'll make them much easier to solve. And once you start doing this, you'll start to see more. You'll start to see conflicts everywhere. And sometimes these aren't. Again, they're not necessarily conflicts, but they're choices. But you start to see everything this way, and it makes dealing with them much faster and easier. Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, then I will sign off and talk to everybody next month.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks, Lisa.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.